The blade enters my back with the intimacy of a lover's embrace. I feel every inch of iron as it slides between my ribs, scraping bone, puncturing the soft tissue of my lung. The pain is not what I expected. It is cold, so impossibly cold that I mistake it for heat at first, a burning that steals the breath I am already losing. My knees buckle against stone that seems to reach up and claim me, and as I fall forward, my hands find the pillar I was asked to touch, the pillar of sacrifice, though I did not know its name until this moment, until the moment my blood began to paint its ancient surface. Behind me, I hear her breathing, steady, calm. The same rhythm I fell asleep to for 3 months on the road. The same breath that once whispered encouragement when bandits surrounded us outside Rorikstead. The same lungs that laughed at my terrible jokes around campfires from Whiterun to Windhelm. She twists the blade, and I understand that I never knew her at all. My name is Torald, and I am going to die on this mountain because I made the mistake of believing that loyalty meant something. The taste of copper fills my mouth. My own blood, warm and thick, pooling against my tongue as I try to breathe through lungs that no longer work properly. I can smell the snow, clean and sharp, and utterly indifferent to my suffering. I can hear the wind howling across the plateau, carrying away my final breaths like offerings to an uncaring sky. I was a sellsword before I met her. Not a particularly good one, but good enough to survive in Skyrim, which counts for something in a land where dragons fall from the sky and the dead refuse to stay buried. I grew up in Falkreath, in the shadow of that great cemetery that sprawls across the hold like a garden of stone. My father tended the graves there. My mother sold flowers to mourners. I learned early that death was not something to fear, but something to respect. Something that came for everyone eventually, with neither malice nor mercy. I left home at 17, after my father caught the rattles and joined the very graves he had tended for 30 years. My mother followed him within the season, and I found myself alone in a town that smelled of freshly turned earth and old sorrow. I took my father's iron sword from above the hearth, the one he had carried in the Great War before a Thalmor mace shattered his knee and sent him home. I walked north with nothing but that blade and a bedroll, and I learned to fight by fighting, by bleeding, by watching others bleed. By the time I was 25, I had worked for merchants and nobles, soldiers and criminals. I had guarded caravans through the Pale and hunted bandits in the Rift. I had killed men who deserved it and men who probably did not, and I had made my peace with both. I was not a good man, but I was not cruel. I took no pleasure in suffering. I simply did what needed to be done to survive another day, another season, another year. That is who I was when I met Valdis in the Bannered Mar. She was sitting alone near the fire, nursing a mead and watching the room with eyes that missed nothing. I noticed her hands first, scarred knuckles, calloused palms, the hands of someone who had held a weapon long enough for it to become an extension of their body. She was perhaps 30, with hair the color of dried blood and a face that might have been beautiful if not for the coldness that lived behind her eyes. I did not approach her. She approached me. She asked if I was for hire, and I said I was always for hire. She asked if I could keep my mouth shut, and I said my discretion was part of my fee. She asked if I was afraid of Daedra, and I laughed and told her I was afraid of going hungry. Daedra was someone else's problem. She did not laugh. She simply nodded, as if I had passed some test I did not know I was taking, and she told me she needed someone to watch her back while she traveled. Long-term work, good pay. Dangerous, but no more dangerous than anything else in Skyrim. I should have asked more questions. I should have wondered why someone with her obvious skills needed a sellsword at all. I should have noticed the way she looked at me, not with interest or even assessment, but with something closer to calculation, like a butcher examining livestock. But the pay was good, and I was tired of sleeping in ditches, and she had honest steel at her hip instead of magic crackling at her fingertips. I shook her hand and sealed my own death, though I would not understand that until 3 months later on a frozen mountain with her blade in my back. The first weeks were unremarkable. We travelled the roads between holds, taking jobs where we found them, clearing a mine of frostbite spiders near Dawnstar, escorting a merchant through the pass at Helgen, investigating strange lights in a ruin that turned out to be nothing more than trapped souls in a forgotten Dwemer device. She was competent in combat, better than competent, moving with a precision that spoke of training I could not identify. She did not waste movements. She did not hesitate. She killed with the efficiency of someone who had stopped counting long ago. I told myself this was simply professionalism. I had known warriors like her before, men and women who had seen so much death that they no longer flinched from it. I did not judge her for it. In truth, I admired it. I thought we were the same, she and I, survivors in a world that did not reward softness. I was wrong about so many things. She began to change after the first month. Or perhaps she simply began to reveal what had always been there. Small things at first. The way she would study strangers in taverns with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. The questions she asked about loyalty and betrayal, about what a person would do to survive, about whether honor had any meaning when no one was watching. I thought she was testing me, probing my values the way employers sometimes do. I answered honestly. I told her I believed in keeping my word. I told her loyalty was the only currency that mattered when gold ran out. I told her I would die before I betrayed someone who trusted me. She smiled when I said that. I remember the smile clearly now, though I did not understand it then. It was the smile of someone who had found exactly what they were looking for. The dreams started in the second month. I would wake in the night, heart pounding, with fragmented images bleeding away like water through fingers. A voice that was neither male nor female, speaking words I could not quite hear. A sense of being watched by something vast and patient and utterly alien. A throne made of plotting and treachery, where figures in golden armor murdered each other endlessly for the honor of sitting upon it. I told myself it was nothing. Bad meat. Too much mead. The stress of the road. But the dreams persisted. They grew more vivid, more insistent, more impossible to dismiss. I began to see faces in the flames of our campfires. I began to hear whispers in the wind that almost formed words. I would catch glimpses of movement in my peripheral vision, shapes that dissolved when I turned to look directly at them. The boundary between waking and sleeping grew thin, and sometimes I could not tell which side I was on. One night, I dreamed I was standing in a great hall made entirely of shadows. The walls shifted and reformed around me, never quite solid, never quite stable. At the far end sat a figure on a throne of obsidian, and though I could not see its face, I knew it was looking at me. I knew it had always been looking at me. I felt its attention like a physical weight, pressing down on my chest until I could barely breathe. The figure spoke without moving. It asked me what I valued. It asked me what I would sacrifice. It asked me if I understood that strength was the only truth, and that loyalty was merely another form of weakness waiting to be exploited. I woke screaming, and Valdis was there, her hand on my shoulder, her voice calm and reassuring. She told me it was just a nightmare. She told me I was safe. She told me to go back to sleep. I believed her. Of course I believed her. Valdis asked about my dreams one morning, and I made the mistake of telling her. She listened with an attention that should have warned me. She asked specific questions about the voice, about the throne, about the figures in gold. When I finished, she placed her hand on my shoulder and told me that dreams were just dreams, that they meant nothing unless we gave them meaning. That night, the dreams were clearer. The voice told me its name, Boethiah. I knew the name, of course. Every Nord knows the names of the Daedric princes, if only to know what to avoid. Boethiah was the prince of plots, the deceiver of nations, the patron of murder and betrayal, and the hidden knife. The Dark Elves worshipped Boethiah as one of their sacred three, though even they approached that worship with caution. Boethiah was not a god who rewarded devotion. Boethiah rewarded only strength, only cunning, only the willingness to do whatever was necessary to triumph. I told Valdis about the name, and she grew very still. She told me that Boethiah sometimes reached out to mortals, that the dreams were a sign of favor, or at least of interest. She told me there was a shrine, high in the mountains east of Windhelm, where those who had been touched by Boethiah's attention could seek answers. She told me we should go there, that I deserved to understand what was happening to me. I should have refused. I should have walked away from her that very moment and never looked back. But the dreams had unsettled me, and she had been my companion for months, and I trusted her. I trusted her because she had fought beside me, because she had saved my life when those bandits caught us off guard, because she had shared her food when mine ran out and her fire when I was cold. I trusted her because that is what you do with someone who has become your friend. We travelled east through the frozen wastes beyond Windhelm. The journey took 4 days, and with each mile, the land grew more hostile. The wind cut like broken glass. The snow fell so thick that I could barely see her walking ahead of me. I began to notice that she was not leading me along any path I recognized. We were climbing into mountains where no sane person would go, where the cold alone would kill anyone without proper preparation. On the second day, we passed through a valley where nothing lived. No birds, no wolves, not even the hardy snow foxes that seem to thrive everywhere in Skyrim. The silence was absolute, broken only by the crunch of our boots in the snow and the constant moan of the wind. I felt watched, though I could see nothing but white in every direction. The sensation crawled along my spine like frost forming on bare skin. That night, we sheltered in a cave that Valdis seemed to know was there. She built the fire with practiced efficiency, and I watched the flames dance against the stone walls, casting shadows that seemed to move independently of the light. I asked her about the shrine. What would we find there? What Boethiah actually wanted from those who sought the prince's attention? She told me that Boethiah valued strength above all else, that the prince despised weakness, cowardice, and those who relied on others rather than themselves. She told me that Boethiah's champions were the most feared warriors in all of Tamriel, because they had proven themselves willing to do whatever was necessary to achieve their goals. No hesitation, no mercy, no regret. I asked her if she worshipped Boethiah, and she smiled that cold smile and told me she did not worship anything. She simply understood power, and Boethiah was a source of power for those strong enough to claim it. The third day brought us higher into the mountains. The air grew thin and sharp, each breath like swallowing needles. The snow gave way to ice, and we picked our way across glaciers that groaned beneath our weight. I saw things in the ice, frozen shapes that might have been animals, or might have been something else entirely. I did not ask Valdis about them. I was not certain I wanted to know. That night, there was no cave. We made camp in the lee of a boulder, huddled together against the killing cold. I remember the way she pressed against my back, her warmth the only thing keeping me from freezing. I remember thinking how grateful I was to have found someone I could trust so completely. How lucky I was that fate had brought us together. The fourth day, we reached the final ascent. I asked her if she was certain this was the right way. She looked back at me with those cold eyes and told me she was certain. She told me the shrine was close. She told me everything would make sense soon. I believed her. Even then, with every instinct screaming that something was wrong, I believed her. The shrine appeared through the blizzard like a fever dream, stone pillars rising from a plateau carved into the mountainside, stairs leading up to a structure that might have been an altar or a tomb, and standing at its center, a pillar of dark stone covered in symbols I could not read, radiating a presence that made my skin crawl. The stone was black as a starless night, yet it seemed to pulse with an inner light that had nothing to do with illumination. It was the light of attention, of hunger, of something ancient and patient and utterly without mercy. There were bodies. I stopped counting after 7. They lay scattered across the plateau, some fresh enough that the snow had not yet covered them, others so old they had become part of the landscape. All of them bore the marks of sacrifice, wrists rubbed raw from being bound to the pillar, drag marks in the frozen ground where they had been hauled into position, and each one killed by a blade in the back, the signature of Boethiah's ritual. I saw Nord men and Dunmer women, a Khajiit whose fur had frozen into spikes of ice, an Imperial in the tattered remains of merchant clothes. They had nothing in common, except the manner of their death and the expression frozen on their faces, not fear, not anger. Confusion, the bewilderment of someone who had trusted completely and discovered that trust too late. I knew then. Before I turned around, before I saw the sword, I knew what I was looking at, and I knew what was about to happen, and still I could not quite believe it. The mind protects itself from truths too terrible to accept. It builds walls of denial and hope, of surely not, and there must be some explanation. I felt those walls crumbling as I turned to face Valdis. She had drawn her sword. Not the casual readiness of someone expecting danger, but the deliberate motion of someone who had already decided what came next. Her face held no expression at all. No anger, no regret, no hesitation. She looked at me the way I had seen butchers look at cattle, the way I had looked at enemies in battle, not with hatred, with purpose. She told me to touch the pillar. I asked her what was happening, though I already knew. The dreams, the careful questions about loyalty, the journey to this forsaken place. I had been chosen, but not the way I thought. Not because Boethiah favored me, because Boethiah's servant needed someone to sacrifice, and I had made myself the perfect victim by trusting her completely. She told me that Boethiah required blood, that the Prince of Plots only spoke to those willing to prove their devotion through the ultimate betrayal. She told me she was seeking to become Boethiah's champion, and champions must demonstrate their worth by sacrificing someone who trusts them completely. She told me she had spent years searching for someone suitable, someone loyal, someone who would follow her anywhere, believe anything, trust her even unto death. She told me I was perfect. She told me to touch the pillar, and then she would do what every aspiring champion must do. I drew my sword. I was not going to die on my knees for some Daedric prince. I was not going to let her murder me without a fight. I was still a warrior. I had survived bandits and beasts, and things that crawled out of ancient tombs. I would survive this. I did not survive this. She was faster than I had ever seen her move. In all our months together, all our fights side by side, she had never shown me what she was truly capable of. She had been holding back, hiding her true nature, letting me believe we were equals when in truth she was something far more dangerous. The first blow came so fast I barely registered the motion. My sword flew from my numb fingers and clattered across the frozen stone. The second strike opened my thigh to the bone, and I felt the heat of my own blood steaming in the cold air as I dropped to one knee. The third, the one I never even saw, was the blade that found my back as I tried to crawl toward my fallen weapon. The steel was cold, so cold it burned. I felt it scrape against my spine, felt it pierce something vital deep inside me, felt my body begin to shut down from the shock of it. My hands found the pillar without my telling them to, as if some part of me was still trying to obey the last command I had been given. Touch the pillar. Die for Boethiah. Complete the ritual that had been the point of everything, and now I am here, dying against this pillar that pulses with dark energy, feeling my blood drain into stone older than my language has words for. The symbols carved into its surface seem to writhe in my fading vision, spelling out secrets I no longer have the time to understand. Valdis kneels beside me. She does not gloat. She does not explain. She simply waits, watching my life fade with the patience of someone who has done this before. Who will do it again? Who will always find another fool willing to trust her, to follow her, to die for her ambition? I want to hate her. I try to hate her. But all I feel is the cold spreading through my chest and a terrible understanding dawning in my fading mind. I was never her companion. I was never her friend. I was a resource to be cultivated and spent, a tool to be sharpened and then broken. From the very first moment she approached me in that tavern, she was not looking for someone to watch her back. She was looking for someone naive enough to offer her their own. The voice comes then, not in a dream but in my dying thoughts, filling my skull with a presence so vast that my consciousness feels like a candle before a hurricane. Boethiah speaks. The prince does not speak in words exactly. It is more like concepts being pressed directly into my mind, images and feelings and truths that I lack the ability to process. I understand that Boethiah is pleased, not with Valdis, though she will receive her reward, not even with my death, which is merely a mechanism for something greater. Boethiah is pleased because I have proven something. My trust, my loyalty, my willingness to believe in another person despite every warning, these things have demonstrated the fundamental weakness at the heart of mortal existence. We want to believe, we need to believe. Even those of us who have seen the worst of what people can do, even hardened sellswords who have watched men die for nothing, even cynics who claim to trust no one, we still reach out. We still hope. We still offer our backs to those we think have earned our faith. And Boethiah feeds on that hope, the way a vampire feeds on blood. I feel myself slipping away, but the prince is not finished with me. My soul does not drift toward whatever afterlife awaits those who die on foreign soil far from the halls of valor. It is caught, held, drawn into a space between spaces where Boethiah's true nature becomes horrifyingly clear. The realm of Boethiah is not a place in any sense I understand. It is a state of being, a conceptual space where betrayal and ambition exist in their purest forms. There is no ground beneath my feet, yet I stand. There is no sky above my head, yet I feel the weight of something pressing down. The air, if it can be called air, tastes of copper and ash and broken promises. The light, if it can be called light, reveals everything while illuminating nothing. I see the endless tournament of champions that I glimpsed in my dreams, but now I understand what I am seeing. The old stories call it the Tournament of 10 Bloods, a contest where Boethiah's faithful murder each other for the prince's favor. Every figure in golden armor was once like me, a mortal, a believer, someone who trusted the wrong person and paid with their soul. They number in the thousands, perhaps the tens of thousands, an army of the betrayed stretching across a battlefield that has no horizon. They fight without rest, without hope, without anything except the compulsion that Boethiah has placed upon their eternal souls. Some of them still remember who they were. I can see it in their eyes when our gazes meet across the chaos of combat, a flicker of the person they used to be, trapped behind the mask of the warrior they have become. They fight anyway. They cannot do otherwise. The prince's will is absolute here, and resistance is as impossible as breathing underwater. Others have forgotten everything. They are shells animated by violence, going through the motions of combat without any awareness of why. I wonder how long it takes to reach that state. How many centuries of endless death and resurrection until the mind simply gives up and retreats into oblivion. I wonder if that forgetting is a mercy or the final cruelty. They fight forever in Boethiah's realm, killing and being killed, rising and falling, each temporary victory meaning nothing because the competition never ends. There is no final champion. There is no ultimate reward. There is only the struggle itself, the endless cycle of betrayal and murder and ambition that Boethiah finds so endlessly entertaining. And I am going to join them. I feel the pull, the inexorable draw toward that eternal battlefield, but something gives me pause. A moment of clarity before oblivion. I turn my dying attention back to the mortal world, back to my body slumped against the pillar of sacrifice, back to Valdis rising to her feet with my blood on her blade. Boethiah speaks to her now. I can hear it, though I am no longer truly part of the world where she stands. The prince is offering her the same thing that was offered to the champion before her. Power, purpose, the chance to prove herself worthy through acts of treachery and murder. Boethiah will send her to Knife Point Ridge, where the previous champion waits. She will kill them and take the ebony mail from their still warm corpse. She will wear that artifact as proof of her devotion, and she will serve the Prince of Plots until someone betrays her in turn. That is Boethiah's cruelest joke. The faithful servant is simply another piece on the board, to be sacrificed when a more promising piece comes along. Valdis thinks she has won something today. She thinks my death has elevated her. But she is just as much a tool as I was, just as expendable, just as doomed. I would laugh if I still had lungs. The moment stretches, and I find myself thinking about choices. About the path that led me to this altar. I could have refused her offer in the Bannered Mare. I could have walked away when the dream started. I could have listened to my instincts instead of my need for connection. So many moments when I might have chosen differently, and each time I chose trust over caution, hope over survival. Was I wrong? I do not think so. Not entirely. The world is cruel enough without closing ourselves off completely. Without trust, there is no friendship. Without faith, there is no love. Without vulnerability, there is no connection at all. Boethiah's servants live in a world of pure suspicion, where everyone is a potential enemy and every relationship is a transaction. They are safe from betrayal because they never allow themselves to be betrayed, but they are also alone. Utterly and completely alone. I had 3 months with someone I thought was my friend. 3 months of shared campfires and terrible jokes, and the comfort of knowing someone was watching my back. It was a lie. Every moment of it was a lie designed to make this ending possible. But the comfort I felt was real. The joy was real. The sense of belonging, however briefly, was real. Boethiah cannot understand that. The Prince of Plots sees only the betrayal at the end, only the knife in the back, only the blood on the altar. The prince does not see what comes before, the warmth that makes the cold so bitter, the light that makes the darkness so complete. Perhaps that is why Boethiah needs us, needs our trust, our faith, our foolish willingness to believe. Because without mortals who can love and hope and offer themselves up to others, there would be nothing to betray. The Prince of Plots would have no plots to weave. The deceiver would have no one left to deceive. Boethiah feeds on betrayal. Hope is just the bait. The pull grows stronger. My consciousness begins to fragment, to scatter like sparks from a dying fire. I am going to join the eternal tournament. I am going to fight and die forever in service to a God who sees me as nothing more than entertainment. I am going to become another golden figure in an endless army of the betrayed. But I will remember. I will remember that I was Torald of Falkreath. I will remember my father's grave and my mother's flowers. I will remember the weight of an iron sword and the warmth of a campfire and the sound of laughter in the night. I will remember that I chose to trust, and that my trust was broken, and that I am not ashamed. Boethiah's realm receives me, and I fall into the competition that never ends. Around me, thousands of souls in golden armor clash in an endless battle for supremacy. I feel myself being shaped, being armored, being fitted for war. A weapon appears in my hand, and I know that I will fight with it until something kills me, and then I will rise and fight again, forever. But as the first opponent approaches, as I raise my blade to meet theirs, I hold on to something that Boethiah cannot touch, a kernel of warmth in the cold, a memory of hope in the realm of despair. I chose to trust. I chose to believe. I chose to offer my back to someone I thought was my friend. And even here, even now, even knowing how it ended, I would make the same choice again. Because to live without trust is not to live at all. It is merely to exist, to survive, to endure an empty immortality no better than the one I now face. The blade comes down, and I parry, and the eternal tournament claims another participant. I think of Valdis sometimes, in the moments between battles. I wonder if she found what she was looking for in Boethiah's service. I wonder if the power was worth the price. I wonder if she ever thinks of me, or if I was simply forgotten the moment my blood stopped flowing. I suspect I know the answer. The champions of Boethiah do not look back. They do not reflect on those they have sacrificed to reach their position. They move forward, always forward, climbing over the bodies of the betrayed toward a summit that does not exist. Each believes they will be different. Each believes they will be the one to truly earn the prince's favor. Each believes the chain of betrayal will end with them. None of them understand that the chain is the point. The endless cycle of trust and treachery, hope and despair, that is what Boethiah truly wants. Not champions, not servants, not even entertainment. Boethiah wants the betrayal itself. The moment when faith becomes foolishness. The instant when trust transforms into vulnerability. The crack in the heart when someone realizes they were never loved, never valued, never seen as anything more than a stepping stone. I feel that crack every time I die in the eternal tournament. Every time a blade finds my back because I trusted the wrong combatant. Every time I rise again and try once more to believe that this time will be different. It never is. And yet I keep fighting, keep hoping, keep trusting, even here in the realm where trust is the ultimate weakness. Perhaps that makes me a fool. Perhaps Boethiah is right, and my faith is simply fuel for a fire that will burn forever. Perhaps loyalty is nothing more than a pretty word we use to describe the blindness that precedes betrayal. Or perhaps the warmth I carry, the memory of campfires and laughter and belonging, is a weapon that even Boethiah cannot break. I do not know. I may never know. But I know this. I was Torald of Falkreath. I trusted someone who did not deserve it. I died on my knees before a God who feeds on broken promises, and I regret nothing. Because I felt the warmth before I felt the cold. I knew the light before I knew the darkness. I believed, truly believed, that I had found a friend. That belief was a gift. The betrayal that followed was simply the price. And in the realm of Boethiah, surrounded by the endless clash of souls who once trusted too easily, I hold on to that gift with everything I have, not as a shield against the horror around me, not as a comfort in the face of eternal war, but as proof that I lived, that I was more than a sacrifice, that the thing which made me vulnerable was also the thing which made me human. Boethiah wanted my blood, and received it. Boethiah wanted my soul, and claimed it. Boethiah wanted my faith, and used it against me. But Boethiah cannot have my memory, cannot take the warmth I carry, cannot destroy the man who chose trust over survival, hope over cynicism, connection over safety. I am Torald of Falkreath. I was betrayed. I will fight forever, and I will never stop believing that it was worth it.